To understand how we can build the resilience of the urban poor, we need to examine the elements of climate and disaster risk, hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. Hazard is caused or affected by hydrometeorological and extreme weather events, such as flooding or heat waves. Exposure refers to the level in which people, housing, assets, and livelihoods are exposed to hazards. Informal settlements are highly exposed because of high population density, low-quality infrastructure, and the presence of hazard-prone environments. Finally, vulnerability refers to the susceptibility of the urban poor to climate-induced shocks or stressors due to income poverty and multiple deprivations, including in housing, income, basic services, and infrastructure. Hazard exposure and vulnerability influence the sensitivity of the population to the impacts of climate change. These elements interact in unique ways in different contexts. These interactions may also change over time, adding to the complexity of designing and implementing measures to build the resilience of the urban poor. Climate and disaster risk assessment and the adaptive capacity of the urban poor should be integrated in planning, investment programming, and assigning interventions to reduce impacts. The urban poor also need to be equipped with knowledge, skills, and resources to improve their adaptive capacity. Strengthening the resilience of the urban poor against present and future climate risks will require a combination of interventions that collectively promote coping, incremental, and transformational strategies. Coping refers to actions that ensure immediate, short-term survival in response to an event and typically does not address underlying vulnerabilities. An example of coping would be tying the roof off a house to its pillars before a typhoon to keep it from being blown away. Incremental adaptation involves addressing immediate and anticipated shocks using small-scale measures that are more responsive to the impacts of climate change compared to coping strategies. For instance, a family may elevate the flooring of the house to make it less susceptible to floods. However, the house may still be affected if climate change worsens flooding. Transformational adaptation addresses the root cause of vulnerability to climate change by significantly changing fundamental attributes of existing social structures and power relations. An example would be strengthening urban poor organizations and providing channels for them to participate and engage with local authorities in decision-making and implementing community upgrading programs. Transformational adaptation is a long-term process and requires behavioral and systematic changes not just from the urban poor, but also other stakeholders such as national and local governments, civil society organizations, and the private sector to address the root causes of vulnerability. These stakeholders need to collaborate and implement complementary strategies at the household, community, and city levels, with financing support at the national level to effect sustainable change. Harmonization is needed to increase the likelihood of achieving transformational adaptation. The Asian Development Bank identified 6 policy areas where resilience building could be integrated to maximize impact of interventions. Social protection should be strengthened to keep the urban poor from falling deeper into poverty and make them better prepared to respond to risks. Public health measures and services should be improved to help the urban poor cope with short and long-term climate stresses that may directly or indirectly affect their health and productivity. Livelihoods should be climate resilient, so there are guaranteed safety nets even in times of crises. Housing should not only be built away from hazard-prone areas, but also designed to protect dwellers from climate risks such as flooding, extreme heat, and rains. Urban planning should integrate climate and disaster risk assessment and involve the urban poor in the planning process. Community infrastructure should be designed and managed to withstand the impact of both current and future hazards without significant damage or loss of function. Interventions across these policy areas should be scalable and responsive to both climate and non-climate risks. 3 enabling factors, capable, accountable, and responsive governance, climate and urban data, and climate and urban finance need to be put into place to secure and sustain the resilience of the urban poor across these 6 policy areas. Capable, accountable, and responsive governance involves not only proactive national and local governments, but also civic engagement, wherein the urban poor actively participate in decision-making, planning, implementing, and managing projects that build their resilience. Climate and urban data should be considered when planning, designing, and implementing resilience initiatives. Both quantitative data and community-provided information should be analyzed to have a better understanding of the issues affecting communities vis-a-vis present and projected impacts of climate change. Climate and urban finance should be made available and accessible at the household, community, and city levels for resilience-building projects and initiatives. In this video, you learned the elements of climate and disaster risk, the continuum of adaptation strategies, the spatial and temporal scales to build the resilience of the urban poor, and an introduction of the 6 policy areas and the 3 enabling factors that need to be considered in designing interventions to build the resilience of the urban poor. Video 3 will provide an overview of how you can build the resilience of the urban poor at the household level.